Good morning, good afternoon, what is it? Good morning still, technically, for some of us. First of all, thanks for coming out. We're excited, obviously. Today marks the start of training camp. It's a special day, obviously, me being new here. It's been a long 3 months to get ready. It's exciting. I just want to start with a couple of housekeeping items, specifically with an injury report. Then I'll get into a little bit of how our camp is being structured, and then open it up to any questions. But from an injury standpoint, obviously, number one, Jake. There's no change in Jake with Jake Muzzin. Jake won't be participating this year. With Matt Murray, Matt has worked closely with our medical team, our performance team over the spring and summer, and it's been determined that Matt's going to require a significant surgery, which will require a significant rehab. That's going to take place in the next week. For Matt's privacy, I'm just going to leave it at that. I'll be happy to update everybody once we're through that, and once Matt's through it. And like I said, he's worked closely. It's been determined now for a while that he'd have to go this path, and we're looking forward to getting him better and on the path to recovery. Bobby McMahon, he's not cleared to play yet, or not cleared to participate fully, is probably the better way to put it. Through the injury of last year, Bobby will begin in our group 3, which I'll walk through that a little bit, how our groups are structured. But he's progressing and moving forward. But on day one, he's not ready for full participation. And then we had 2 injuries in Traverse City during rookie camp. Ty Voigt was injured, and Braden Kressler. Both were injured. Both are progressing. We're hopeful that neither are too significant, and hopefully they'll be back and up and going fully sooner rather than later. The way our camp is structured, so we've got 3 teams. Really, we've broken the camp into 2 teams, if you will, and then we have a third team that I'd like to refer to as our development team. Though it's a lot of our younger players that will spend their time working directly with our development staff. There will be, at times, players from Group 3 moving into Groups 1 or 2, but the main focus of the camp are our 2 teams, and then, as I said, some players that maybe aren't fully ready to participate fully will be in our Group 3. Some of the younger players will be working and getting extra time with our development staff over the course of the next week. So that's how camp is structured. And again, before we open up to questions, I'm just excited to get started. You spend the summer putting your team together. Now, today is day 1 of building your team and becoming a team. And that process happens every year. So I'm excited to get started and fire away with anything you got.
Hey, Brad. Of everything on your to-do list in the offseason, the only potential piece of business that wasn't attended to, I guess, would be William Nylander's status. I'm not going to ask you to comment, because I know you're not going to, but everybody's different. Some guys don't like to discuss it during the season. Can you just discuss your approach? Will the lines of communication remain open, or is that something that'll be shelved until a later date?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, and I don't do it to be a pain to you people. But I'm not going to comment. I'm not going to do a daily play-by-play on it. I think I made a comment recently that obviously it's a priority. We want to get Willie signed. Willie's a really good player. You want to keep your good players. Willie's expressed to me, him and I have talked, that he wants to be here. So that's usually a good starting point. And so we'll try to get it done. The lines of communication will always stay open. We'll work with Lewis and see where it gets to. And today today's a day that we want to answer any questions, but after today, really, I'm not going to comment on it until we got something to report. And I just find it's best to do business that way, and hopefully we can find a good conclusion.
Brad, good morning.
Hey.
We watched Las Vegas win the Stanley Cup last spring with a very sound six-man defense and quite a physical six-man defense. Is your defense, as it's currently constructed, good enough to win a Stanley Cup?
We'll see. I like our defense. I think it's underrated. Like every part of your team, I think you're always looking at ways, can you be better? Can you be better sometimes is interpreted of we've got to bring in, a truck full of new people and make ourselves better. Being better can also come from internal growth. It can come from, tweaking a system. It can come from, especially when you talk about defensemen, it can help depending on how your forwards work and how they track and how they play. So it's a long way of answering the question, Steve, of I think our defense. I've been pretty honest of talking about traditionally in the past. I've had bigger defenses than we have here, but I like the defensemen we have here. When you break them down individually, I think there's some really good attributes here. So. Like all parts of our team, tomorrow we start watching, and there's going to be some areas we really like. There's going to be some areas we got to improve upon, and that's what I plan to do. Watch and see where we can help ourselves, and that process starts tomorrow.
Hey, Brad. When you look at some of the changes you've made this offseason, bringing in Domi, Reeves, Bertuzzi, these are some very feisty personalities, and we've heard the terms players already today, piss and vinegar and snot, terms like that. So I'm curious for you, has it been sort of a goal to remake this team's identity? And if so, what would that identity be?
Yeah, I think I've heard a lot from I should probably never use the word snot. I've heard a lot about that. You know what, Matt? I don't know if it was about remaking the identity as much as I firmly believe there's a style that you need to play at the very most important times, and it's as much a mentality as it is anything else. And everything. I know there's been lots of talk about the abrasiveness. These are also good players. To me, they're players that can play inside. They're players that can get to areas that are hard to get to when the games matter the most. So that, to me, is we're not going to focus on what's down the road. Like what I'm going to talk to the players and have talked to the players about is being where your feet are today. That's what's important. But we've all watched games in April, May, and June, and it didn't change 10 years ago. It's not going to change in 10 years, right? There's no space. You got it. It's a harder game. You've got to fight through traffic. And so the more players you can have with that mentality and that skill set, I think it helps you.
Brad, just to build on that question, what is the identity of this team today right now?
Well, that's where you start today. That's what I said. We're going to build that. I know people get lost in, what's this identity. The one thing I would take away from what I've seen and the time I've spent with these players over the summer, this is a driven group. It's a serious group. It's a, they're very committed to their craft. They're committed to having success. I know there's been lots of talk out there around the hockey world about people arriving early. I think this, for the most part, this group's been here for three weeks, maybe more, as a group, skating together, doing things together. There's a real seriousness about them, and I think that stems from a lot of the experiences they've gone through. But in terms of our team identity, I know internally what I want that to look like. I'll keep that to ourselves, but tomorrow we'll start to build that.
Brad, it's a few weeks off, but looks like you might have to make some sort of salary cap decision heading into the season. Wondering about how that weighs on you, and also would you have liked to invite a couple of more PTOs to this camp?
Second one first. No, our camp is where I wanted it to be. We had some opportunities to bring some players. I really think there's some younger players in this organization that, I want to get to know a little bit better. I've got an outside view of them. That's not, I need an inside view. And I think the more I want to give them a path, if there's a path there. Now, they've got to go and get it and earn it and show they deserve to be here. But we've got some younger pros that maybe don't have, they're not 18 years old, right? They've had a couple years, whether it be in the minors or what have you, but I want to see if they're ready to push for a job. Let's be honest, there's not a lot of help wanted signs sitting on our roster right now, right? There's one or two spots, depending on how things go. But I wanted that path for those players to be a little clearer. And if there was somebody out there that I thought could help us, we would. We brought in Noah Gregor, who I really like his game, brings a lot of speed, has got some hardness to him. But I'm happy with where our camp is at, numbers-wise and personnel-wise.
Did Matt Murray suffer an injury during the offseason?
Sorry?
Did Matt Murray suffer an injury during the offseason that led to the need for surgery?
Jonas, a little bit of both. The surgical procedure will be something that he was dealing with. Wasn't in an event. He aggravated some stuff over the summer, but what he's going through was something he was dealing with prior.
Me? Brad, do you anticipate, is there any chance he could be healthy enough to play this season after that surgery, or?
We're going to have to see, Chris. It's going to be a significant rehab. Our hope is he can get, Matt's a good goalie. We're not necessarily focused on time frames right now. It's let's get this done. Let's get it done correctly. Let's start the process of rehabbing, and then we'll see where that leads us to. But this is months, not days or weeks. So we'll see where it gets to. But there certainly is potentially a chance.
And just as a quick follow-up, sorry, how do you see the goaltending playing out now with having veteran Martin Jones here and Joseph Wall as well?
Yeah. I'm interested, like everybody else is, to see how this goes. When we got word sort of Matt's status earlier in the summer, I thought it was important for us from an organizational depth standpoint to add another goaltender. And for me, it was somebody with some, little gray hair, somebody who's played some games, some experience. I just got back from Traverse City. I think we've got some good goaltenders in the pipeline, but they're young goalies. We all know that's an important position that takes time, and we're not going to rush anybody, and I've seen it too often that you can derail a guy putting him in a position too early. So I look at it as we had really good goaltenders on the come that are young, that need to learn the craft. We've got some good goalies here, but we needed something in the middle. So that's where Martin came. I think at the end of the day, it's the NHL. There's competition at every position. I think we've created that with Martin. Now, having said that, Sammy is coming off a heck of a year, has really established himself. I think Joe is, said it in the summer. I've watched Joe for a long time. I think he's at that spot where he's ready to grab. He's ready to grab some time here. And then you got Martin, who's played, has had a lot of success in the league. So we'll let it play out over camp. But I feel, as we sit here today, I feel good about our goaltending.
Brad, the negotiations aside, I'm just curious, with Nylander as a person, as a player, what have you learned about him since you've taken on the job here in Toronto?
Sorry, Mark.
Sorry, yeah. The negotiations aside, just curious what you've learned about Nylander. As a player, as a person, John Tavares just said he's a guy that is built for Toronto.
He is a cool cat. He's a really neat kid. Like I spent a lot of time with him. I think you see this a lot of time. I think again, I've repeated this, and I'll be able to stop soon because now I'm going to have some inside views, but I've always had the outside view. And I always thought there's not a lot that bothers this guy. And when you get to know him, there's not a lot that bothers this guy. And I think he's got it can be misinterpreted. This guy really does care. Like, he cares about having success. He cares about being a really good player. He works at his craft that I don't think, I certainly probably didn't have that perception, how driven he is. I've really enjoyed my time with Willie. He's a great kid.
Brad, the players that were speaking before you talked about how communicative you've been with them right from the outset of you taking over. How important was that for you, really, had you taken over any team, that you would want to do that with the core guys, but specifically also because you probably knew of the relationship that those guys had with Kyle Dubas?
Sure.
And wanting to sort of make that as smooth as possible?
Yeah, Pierre, good question. First of all, I think it's just, you got to be who you are, right? Like, I don't think you can come in and, I've got a way of doing business, and that's, I think you got to be authentic and just be yourself. And I believe that you communicate with people and you let them know what, if our players are going to hear me talk a lot about habits and standards. And I think you have to, when you have expectations, you got to communicate those. You got to get feedback from the players. Me coming in here, I had to learn, about this place. And you only do that by talking to guys and getting to know them and them getting to know you. And so, that's just how I operate. And it's been great. The guys have been, like I said, there's been a real honesty and there's a real seriousness about the group. Like, it's been impressive to watch. Austin, I spent a lot of time with Austin, and somebody asked me, what's your takeaway from Austin? The only word I can come up with is impressive, of how this guy goes about his business and how dialed he is in his preparation. And like I said, Austin got his deal done. Everybody was back here, I think, the next day in town, getting ready. So it's a driven group, and we've gotten to know each other. Now we're looking forward to going on this journey together.
Brad, I just wonder if you could take us back to April when you parted ways with the Flames. Was the plan initially to step away and take some time away, or did you want to get right back in? Because either way, this is probably a job that you didn't expect to be open.
Yeah, that's for sure. I didn't expect it to be open. It's funny, when you're in this for a while, you always say it'd be, you talk to a lot of guys that get some time off, and they say, oh, it's the greatest thing, getting some time off. Then you get some time off, and after about 3 weeks, my wife I said there was a help wanted sign at a coffee shop near our place, and she kind of took an application, passed it along to me, so I was getting a nudge from her. You're wired to do it. Like I said, I didn't, when I left Calgary, there was no master plan. Fortunately enough, this opportunity came available. And like I said at the time that I got here, I'm fortunate because the work of the people that were here before me, that have put this team in a good spot. Fortunate because of that group of players that are, they're focused on a goal here. And now I've got as much as an opportunity, I've got a responsibility to them and to this market who love this team. So it's something I don't take lightly.
Nick Robertson has been to a bunch of these camps now. How do you view his chances of making the team, and what's your message to him as he comes into a contract year here?
Well, Nick's a guy that we talked earlier about, do we need to populate the camp with anybody else? Nick, to me, is a guy I'm really interested in seeing. I've had some good discussions with Nick, right when I got here and Nick was in town. And then over the course of the season, I'm excited to see him. He's a driven kid. I mean, you people know there's those odd people that you got to sort of maybe give a boot in the rear, and then there's some that you got to hold back. He's a guy he's pedal down all the time, which I love. And so, the one thing that's sort of impeded Nick is injuries, right, which you can't control. So what's his chances? Everybody's got a chance. That's what we're going to just watch. We've got 3 weeks or so. We've got a bunch of preseason games. I'm looking forward to seeing him.